I really enjoy the mansplaining of interrupting me to tell me I'm wrong and let me immediately hear your version of what it is. I totally disagree. I think that's semantics.
let's debate.
To me, it's not about not that honing your craft isn't important, but I think there are so many doors, there are so many paths in, and I believe that your intuition will guide you to your specific one. So what you might call a story, is what I'm calling, a path. Look, in Hollywood and in so many other places, there's no one path. It's not like if you were going to go work in accounting and you were like, okay, I go to accounting school, maybe I become a CPA and then I send a resume into a company and then I interview and then I get a job. That is not Hollywood, unfortunately. There's no clear-cut one path. And so
Can I actually interrupt you?
Yes.
Because
I
completely and totally disagree with that. And I'm going to tell you why, and I think you might like this.
Okay.
I think there is a path that everybody follows. Everybody has a different story. So I'm going to workshop this with you right now as a fellow coach, and I want to see if you agree or disagree with this. And then we'll go right back to what you said. But I think this is really important for people that are listening. I spent a decade breaking down everybody's stories. That's essentially what I do with the podcast. Tell me your success story. Everybody's is unique, the exact same steps, exact same path, but how they do it and what it looks like on the surface is different. So imagine instead of talking to filmmakers, you're talking to a room of doctors. Can you imagine going up to each doctor individually and saying, oh my God, it's amazing you're a doctor. How did you become a doctor? Well, I went to undergraduate, majored in pre-med, and then I went to medical school, and then I got a fellowship or an internship, and then after I went through X number of years, I became a doctor. That's amazing. Hey, how did you become a doctor? Same story over and over and over. Also the same path, but it's pretty much the same story. A little bit of nuance in how long it might have taken or whatever practices they tried or whatever. But essentially, nobody says, oh my God, that's amazing. How did you become a doctor, right? You ask somebody, oh my God, how did you become a successful actor or graphic designer or film editor, et cetera, et cetera? Exact same path, all different stories. Your story different than mine, although I have to say, yours is about the closest to my story I've ever heard because you got your first job less than 2 weeks after graduation, which never happens. I got mine a week after graduation, but it's the same general idea of spending months and months doing the outreach beforehand, planting the seeds, building the relationships so you can land, move into your job, right? But what I've been saying on my podcast and everything I write about is essentially it's the same path. Number one, this is something you talk about a lot. You have to be very clear on what is the ladder that you want to climb. And I'm sure you talked about this with your actors, writers, directors. It's not just I want to act, it's what do you want to do? If you want to work in commercials versus television versus features, different industries. So you choose the very specific ladder. Then you have to work at and become awesome at your craft. And then people need to know that you're awesome at your craft. You do those three things, you're going to be successful. I think it's that simple. Discuss.
I really enjoy the mansplaining of interrupting me to tell me I'm wrong and let me immediately hear your version of what it is. I totally disagree. I think that's semantics.
Okay, let's debate.
I mean, it's not a debate to me. I just totally disagree. And look, I've also worked with many different types of artists. Look, a graphic designer, sure. They're probably going to be an art PA and then they're going to get into the union and then they're going to, try to get on shows as a designer. Sure. But like a writer, there's like 7 or 9 different ways in which you could become a successful writer, right? So you could start as a writer's PA or a writer's assistant in a writer's room. You could sit in your own apartment and never leave it and get a manager who shops your scripts around and then you sell a script. You could get, staffed on a show as a writer. You could work as an assistant to a producer who gets their own, which I've had a friend who did this, a producer who had an overall deal with a studio. And so then that producer works on their own shows until the studio picks up one of them. And then when they pick up one of them, they get to write. So to me, it's, sure, you want to say, oh, it's study your craft and then have somebody notice your craft. Like that, to me, that's like minimizing it to something incredibly oversimplified. And I don't think Hollywood works that way. Like, I don't even think it's about that, because I always tell my clients, like, how many times have you watched a TV show and you were like, oh, that acting was bad? Or, oh, that writing was terrible. So, like, because I always say the law of attraction doesn't give a shit about your talent. So to me, it's not about that. To me, it's not about not that honing your craft isn't important, but I think there are so many doors, there are so many paths in, and I believe that your intuition will guide you to your specific one. So what you might call a story, is what I'm calling, a path. There are actors who, will start on the indie route and do lots of non-union stuff, and then finally get an agent and a manager, and then work their way up to a co-star and get their first co-star. And then maybe they do 5 co-stars, and then maybe they finally get a guest star, and then maybe they finally get a recurring, and then maybe years down the line, they book a series regular. There could also be another path where somebody does, for example, my cousin, his first feature film was with Sundance Labs. He won Sundance, and his movie was then nominated for Best Picture for an Oscar, his first feature. So, and like same thing with actors, there are actors, I always talk about Gilmore Girls, like Alexis Bledel had never acted before, and she booked her first show was a series regular. So in that sense, to me, like, there are so many different paths in this industry, so many ways in, and not even just so many ways in, but then so many ways in which you grow your career. Somebody like Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard, they've started businesses, which is really super cool. They have a line of clothes, baby products, at Walmart, and they've done commercials and acting. And then Kristen obviously has done singing, and then they've hosted a reality show, a game show or something, so their path looks so different than, let's say, an actor who is on Grey's Anatomy and stays on it for 15 years, right? So I do think that paths in creative fields just can look so different. And I think the way in which we find our path that is best for us is by listening to our intuition and letting it guide us. I really, truly believe that our intuition will show us every step that we need to take. Like, you're on a scavenger hunt and you receive the next clue, and you receive the next clue, and you receive the next clue, and your intuition leads you to each one.